The mop hit the floor at 04:45 with the wet slap of resignation. Another day. Another shift cleaning up after people who wouldn't remember her face if their lives depended on it. Maya Reeves pushed her gray industrial cart down the sterile corridors of Joint Naval Complex San Piedra, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking against the polished linoleum. The base sprawled along the California coastline like a concrete fortress, all sharp angles and chain-link fencing, home to 3,000 personnel who treated support staff like furniture that occasionally moved. She'd been here 14 months. 14 months of emptying trash cans filled with classified documents nobody bothered to shred properly. 14 months of wiping down conference tables while officers discussed operations in 7 different languages, assuming she understood none of them. 14 months of perfecting the art of being invisible. "Morning, Maya," Carlos called from the other end of the hallway, his mop sloshing enthusiastically. He was 62, had been cleaning naval facilities since before she was born, and possessed the kind of relentless cheerfulness that suggested either profound wisdom or complete denial. Maya nodded once, a carefully measured gesture that acknowledged his greeting without inviting conversation. "Still not talking, huh?" Lucia appeared beside her cart, leaning against it with the casual familiarity of someone who'd long ago stopped expecting answers. "One of these days you're gonna crack. Maybe tell us where you're really from. That accent of yours, when you do speak, it's all over the map." Maya offered a small, non-committal smile and continued preparing her cleaning supplies. The truth was, her accent was deliberately inconsistent, a linguistic smokescreen she'd cultivated over years of training. Sometimes Eastern European, sometimes vaguely Mediterranean. Always just foreign enough to justify her supposed limited English comprehension. All right, Lucia said, pushing off the cart with a theatrical sigh. "Keep your mysteries. But when you're ready for coffee and actual human conversation, you know where to find me." As the other custodial staff dispersed to their assigned sectors, Maya began her methodical route through the intelligence wing. This was the heart of the facility, the nerve center where operational decisions were made, where classified briefings occurred behind doors marked with security clearances she theoretically didn't possess. She moved through these spaces like a ghost, predictable, harmless, utterly forgettable. At 05:27, Commander Ethan Cross strode past her without a glance, deep in conversation with 2 junior officers. "The destroyer group repositions Friday at dawn," he said, his voice carrying that particular brand of self-importance that came with early promotions and insufficient humility. "Spanish Navy's providing escort through the strait. Intelligence suggests Russian submarine activity, so we're adjusting the route." Maya continued dusting a display case containing various naval commendations. Her hand moved in perfect rhythmic circles, but her eyes, hidden beneath lowered lashes, tracked every word, every gesture, every detail of the conversation happening 3 feet from her head. Cross and his entourage disappeared around the corner, their voices fading into the ambient hum of the facility. She finished the display case and moved to the operations center. The night shift had left their usual debris: lukewarm coffee in styrofoam cups, scattered printouts, a half-eaten sandwich congealing beside a keyboard. Maya collected the trash with mechanical efficiency, her gaze sweeping across the room with the casual disinterest of someone performing a mindless task. A map on the central console caught her attention for exactly 1.3 seconds. Rendezvous coordinates near Gibraltar were marked incorrectly, placing the meeting point dangerously close to commercial shipping lanes. A rookie error, or deliberate sabotage. She moved on, her expression unchanged. An hour later, intelligence officers gathered around the main conference table, spreading documents and photographs in preparation for the morning briefing. Maya pushed her cart to the far corner, beginning to clean the windows. "Can you do that later?" Lieutenant Fisher asked without looking at her. "We have important work here." Maya nodded and started to retreat. "No, it's fine," Commander Cross interjected with a dismissive wave. "She can clean around us." "She doesn't understand anyway. Right, Maya?" He smiled, the kind of smile that thought it was being magnanimous. "Doesn't speak much English, this one." Maya kept her eyes down, moving to a different window as they continued their discussion, as if she had ceased to exist. "The joint operation with Spanish intelligence has been accelerated," Cross said, tapping a stack of photographs. "Their sources indicate unusual naval movement from the Moroccan side. Doesn't match any official exercises." "Do we have confirmation from our assets?" a senior lieutenant asked. "Partial," We're waiting on linguistic analysis of intercepted communications. The dialect suggests northern Morocco, but there are inconsistencies. Maya cleaned methodically, her cloth moving in perfect arcs across the glass. She never lingered, never showed interest. When she finished the windows, she collected discarded cups and straightened chairs in the adjacent room. As she worked, she noticed a filing cabinet left partially open. Sloppy security that would have earned a junior officer a formal reprimand. Inside, a folder labeled Operation Sentinel, classified, sat askew at the edge. She pushed the cabinet closed with a soft click, her fingers grazing the folder for exactly half a second, long enough to photograph the visible text with the micro camera embedded in her wedding ring. A ring from a marriage that had never existed to a husband who'd never lived, worn as part of a cover story so thoroughly constructed that even the base's background check had confirmed its fictional details. The morning progressed like all the others. Officers arrived, conversations flowed, classified information hung in the air like smoke while Maya moved through it all, collecting, observing, documenting. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. At 0847, alarms began rippling through the facility's public address system. Admiral on deck, Admiral Castellanos arriving at main entrance. All personnel prepare for inspection. The announcement triggered the usual flurry of activity. Officers straightened uniforms. Enlisted personnel adjusted their posture. Even the civilian contractors seemed to stand a little taller. Admiral Sofia Castellanos had assumed command of Joint Naval Complex San Piedro less than 72 hours ago. Her reputation preceded her like the bow wave of a destroyer, meticulous, unforgiving, possessing a photographic memory for protocol violations and an almost supernatural ability to detect bullshit from remarkable distances. Maya continued her work as the Admiral's entourage swept through the building. She was emptying a wastebasket near the security checkpoint when they passed, a cluster of crisp uniforms and military bearing, with Admiral Castellanos at the center like the eye of a storm. The Admiral's gaze swept the corridor with systematic precision, cataloging every detail. When her eyes landed on Maya, they paused. Not long, maybe 2 seconds. But it was 2 seconds longer than most officers had looked at her in 14 months. Maya kept her head down, continuing to work as the group moved past. But something in that brief moment of eye contact had shifted. A calculation had been made. A question had been asked and filed away for later consideration. She finished emptying the trash and moved to the next corridor, her routine unchanged. But her mind was already recalculating probabilities, assessing risk factors, preparing contingencies. Admiral Castellanos was not like the others, and that made her either a threat or an opportunity. The operations briefing at 1100 hours was supposed to be routine. Instead, it devolved into a linguistic disaster that would have been comedic if it wasn't potentially catastrophic. Maya was cleaning an adjacent conference room, close enough to hear, far enough to maintain her invisibility, when the shouting started. "These translations are garbage." The voice belonged to a Moroccan liaison officer, his accent thick, but his English precise. The technical specifications use incorrect terminology in both Arabic and French. This document confuses surveillance radius with detection perimeter in 3 separate sections. "Our translators worked all night on this," a Spanish intelligence officer replied, frustration evident in his tone. "The Joint Maritime Security Protocol must be finalized today. Then find someone who speaks proper Arabic technical language," the Moroccan shot back. "This document will cause operational failures, not prevent them." The Spanish officer threw his hands up. "I'll contact Madrid again, but I can't promise revised translations before the deadline." Both men stormed out through different exits, leaving the disputed documents scattered across a side table like casualties of linguistic warfare. Maya continued cleaning, working her way methodically around the conference room. When she reached the side table, she paused, a break in her otherwise perfect rhythm. The documents lay in disarray, marked with frustrated annotations in 3 languages. She glanced toward the door. Empty. She looked toward Admiral Castellanos' office across the hall. The door was open, but the Admiral appeared focused on her own paperwork. Maya picked up the documents as if to straighten them. Her eyes scanned the pages with the rapid efficiency of someone who'd spent years training for exactly this kind of analysis. The errors were obvious to anyone with legitimate expertise. Arabic nautical terms mistranslated, French technical specifications rendered nonsensical. Chinese annotations, added by a previous reviewer. that had somehow identified a Russian naval term, but then been incorrectly converted back to Arabic. She retrieved a pencil from her cart, one of those cheap mechanical ones that came in bulk packs, and made tiny, precise marks in the margins. Corrections in Arabic, clarifications in French, even a note in Russian, where the original translator had clearly been working from a flawed source document. Her hand moved with absolute confidence, the penmanship deliberately cramped and utilitarian. These weren't the corrections of a cleaning woman. These were the annotations of a subject matter expert. She placed the documents exactly as she'd found them, replaced her pencil, and resumed cleaning. From her office doorway, Admiral Castellanos watched with an expression that revealed nothing and calculated everything. 20 minutes later, Maya was pushing her cart down the west corridor when she heard the Admiral's voice. "Thank you." The words were quiet, almost conversational. Maya paused, turned slightly, and offered a small nod without making direct eye contact. Admiral Castellanos stood in the doorway of her office, her posture relaxed, but her gaze sharp as surgical steel. "The translations," the Admiral continued. "That was remarkably perceptive." Maya said nothing. Her role demanded silence. Her cover required incomprehension. The Admiral tilted her head slightly, studying Maya with the same systematic attention she'd applied earlier. Most people wouldn't have recognized those errors. Fewer still would have the linguistic expertise to correct them across multiple technical vocabularies. Still, Maya remained silent. "Captain Reeves," the Admiral said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "That is your real name, isn't it?" The corridor seemed to contract. Time stretched. Maya's training screamed at her to maintain cover, to feign confusion, to protect the operation above all else. But Admiral Castellanos had just used her actual rank. Not Maya the cleaning woman. Captain Reeves. The illusion was over. Slowly, Maya straightened from her customary hunched posture. Her shoulders rolled back, her chin lifted. The carefully cultivated invisibility evaporated like morning fog under direct sunlight. When she spoke, her voice carried no accent, no hesitation, no deference. "How long have you known, Admiral?" Castellanos allowed herself a slight smile. "Since I reviewed the personnel files 3 days ago. Your background check is impressive. Meticulously constructed, thoroughly documented, completely false. The kind of legend that takes a professional intelligence agency months to build. And yet you said nothing. Because I wanted to understand why." The Admiral stepped back, gesturing into her office. "We should talk. Privately." Maya glanced at her cart, then back at the Admiral. After 14 months of invisibility, walking openly into a flag officer's office felt like stepping onto a stage with house lights at full brightness. She left the cart in the hallway and entered. Admiral Castellanos closed the door. "Coffee?" she offered, moving to a small machine in the corner. "Black," Maya replied. The Admiral poured 2 cups, handed one to Maya, and settled into the chair behind her desk. "Captain Maya Reeves, Navy Intelligence, specialized in linguistic analysis and deep cover operations. Decorated service record, most of it classified. Currently operating under codename Wraith." She sipped her coffee. "Did I miss anything?" Maya remained standing, her mind racing through contingencies and calculating whether this conversation represented mission compromise or unexpected evolution. "My assignment is classified under compartmented protocols. Even the base commander isn't cleared for operational details." "I'm aware," Castellanos replied, "which is why I went through considerably unconventional channels to confirm your identity. Channels that resulted in a rather terse phone call from someone at the Pentagon who strongly suggested I pretend I'd never heard of Operation Wraith and continue about my business. And yet here we are." "Here we are," the Admiral agreed, "because 4 hours ago I received intelligence suggesting that the security breach you've been investigating for 14 months is about to escalate from passive intelligence gathering to active operational sabotage." Maya's expression shifted, minutely. "What kind of intelligence?" Admiral Castellanos activated her computer, pulling up a classified briefing. "Signals intelligence, intercepted communications referencing an operation called Widow's Peak. The chatter suggests a coordinated action planned for this Friday, coinciding with the destroyer group repositioning that Commander Cross was discussing so freely this morning." Maya moved closer, studying the screen. The intercepts were in Russian, Original text with machine translation below. Her eyes scanned the content with practiced speed. "This isn't just intelligence gathering," she said quietly. "This is preparation for kinetic action. They're not just watching our operations, they're planning to disrupt them. Which is why I need to know what you found during your time here, what you've observed, who you suspect." Maya was silent for a long moment, weighing operational security against tactical necessity. Finally, she spoke. "Commander Ethan Cross has been systematically compromising operational security for approximately 8 months. He discusses classified information in unsecured spaces, maintains improper document protocols, and has financial irregularities suggesting external funding." Admiral Castellanos nodded slowly. "He's on my list of concerns as well." "Who else?" "Captain Vincent Mercer, head of base security." The Admiral's expression darkened. "You believe our security chief is compromised?" "I believe he's not just compromised. He's the primary asset. Cross is visible, sloppy, obvious. Mercer is methodical, careful, positioned to control how security breaches are investigated. He's not stealing intelligence. He's facilitating it, while ensuring the thefts remain undetected." The weight of that assessment settled between them. "If you're right," Castellanos said carefully, "then we have a flag-level security crisis that extends far beyond this facility. Captain Mercer has access to protocols across the entire theater of operations. Which is exactly why I've spent 14 months cleaning floors instead of making arrests," Maya replied. "We needed to understand the full scope of the operation, identify all the players, document the methodology." The Admiral stood, moving to the window overlooking the complex. "What do you need from me?" "Time, access, and when the moment comes, the authority to act decisively." Castellanos turned back, her decision made. "You have all three. But Captain Reeves, if this escalates, if people die because we waited—" "They won't," Maya said with absolute certainty. "Because the invisible woman has been watching, and she's ready to become very, very visible." Friday arrived with the kind of false calm that preceded storms. The destroyer group was scheduled to reposition at 0600. Joint operations with Spanish and Moroccan forces were in their final coordination phase. The base hummed with purposeful activity. Maya, still in her gray custodial uniform, moved through her usual routine. But her cart now contained more than cleaning supplies. Hidden among the spray bottles and rags were secure communication devices, documentation packets, and a sidearm she'd retrieved from a dead-drop location the previous night. At 0530, she was cleaning the operations center when Captain Mercer entered, unusually early for someone whose official shift didn't start until 0700. He moved with purposeful confidence to a secure terminal, logged in with his credentials, and began accessing files he had no operational need to review. Ship movements, communication protocols, rendezvous coordinates. Maya continued dusting monitors, her movements unchanged, but the micro camera in her ring was documenting everything. Mercer spent 12 minutes at the terminal before logging out and departing. The moment he left, Maya moved to the terminal and inserted a USB drive, one of several pieces of specialized equipment Admiral Castellanos had provided her through backdoor channels. The drive contained forensic software that would analyze exactly what Mercer had accessed and where he'd transmitted the information. It would take 90 seconds to complete its analysis. She stood guard, outwardly cleaning the keyboard while internally counting down the seconds. 72 seconds in, voices approached from the corridor. She yanked the drive, pocketed it, and resumed cleaning with her back to the door just as Commander Cross entered with 2 junior officers. "Morning, Maya," Cross said with perfunctory dismissiveness. Then, to his subordinates, "Final comm check before the repositioning. I want confirmation that all encryption protocols are synchronized with Allied forces." Maya continued her work, invisible once again. But beneath her calm exterior, her mind was processing what she'd just witnessed. Mercer's unauthorized access, Cross's casual mention of encryption protocols, the pieces of a 14-month investigation finally clicking into a coherent picture. The trap was set. Now she just needed to spring it. At 0745, Admiral Castellanos convened an emergency senior staff meeting in the main conference room. The summons had been unexpected, cutting into the morning's planned activities with the kind of urgency that suggested genuine crisis. Maya was not invited. She was, after all, just the cleaning woman. But she was cleaning the adjacent storage room, where a ventilation grate provided perfect audio access to the conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Castellanos began, her voice carrying the weight of command, "we have a significant security situation. In the past 72 hours, intelligence has identified a coordinated operation targeting this facility and the destroyer, repositioning scheduled for today." Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. "The operation, codenamed Widow's Peak, appears to involve both external hostile forces and internal facilitation. To address this threat, I've authorized the deployment of a specialized counterintelligence asset who has been operating on this base for the past 14 months. The murmurs intensified. The door at the back of the conference room opened. Maya walked in, still wearing her gray custodial uniform, still pushing her cleaning cart, but moving with a bearing that had nothing to do with janitorial work. Officers stared in collective confusion. Commander Cross looked annoyed. Captain Mercer's expression flickered with something that might have been recognition or calculation. Admiral Castellanos stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to properly introduce Captain Maya Reeves, Navy Intelligence, specializing in deep cover counterintelligence operations." The silence was absolute. Maya walked to the front of the room. From her cart, not from beneath cleaning supplies, but from a previously hidden compartment, she retrieved her service cap and placed it on her head. The insignia gleamed. When she spoke, her voice carried none of the hesitant, accented uncertainty she'd maintained for over a year. "Good morning. For the past 14 months, I have been operating under deep cover as part of Operation Wraith, a counterintelligence initiative authorized at the highest levels following confirmed security breaches originating from this facility." She activated the room's display system with practiced familiarity, bringing up a presentation that detailed months of investigation. Beginning in January of last year, classified operational details from Pacific Fleet operations began appearing in intercepted communications from Russian intelligence services. The pattern of compromised information suggested the source had high-level access to command decisions and operational planning. Images appeared on screen. Communication intercepts, financial records, surveillance photographs. Operation Wraith was initiated to identify the source without alerting potential suspects. Traditional counterintelligence methods were deemed insufficient due to the sophistication of the breach. Therefore, an alternative approach was implemented, placing a deep cover operative in a position with maximum access but minimum scrutiny. Commander Cross shifted uncomfortably. Captain Mercer's face remained professionally neutral, but his hands had tensed on the armrests of his chair. "Over 14 months, Maya continued, I have documented 73 instances of security protocol violations. I have tracked financial irregularities totaling approximately $2.3 million in illicit payments. I have recorded unauthorized access to classified systems, and I have identified the primary source of this facility's security compromise." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "Captain Vincent Mercer." The room erupted. Officers shouted questions. Mercer shot to his feet, his face flushed with apparent indignation. "This is outrageous," he bellowed. "I've served this Navy for 22 years. I demand to know the basis for this accusation." Maya's expression didn't change. She simply advanced to the next slide. Security camera footage appeared, showing Mercer accessing terminals he shouldn't have touched, meeting with unidentified civilians in restricted areas, installing devices beneath conference tables. The same device that was, at that moment, armed and ready to disrupt every electronic system in the building during the destroyer repositioning that would begin in less than 4 hours. "The evidence is comprehensive," Maya stated. "Financial transfers, communication intercepts, video documentation. Captain Mercer has been operating as a Russian intelligence asset for approximately 7 years, since shortly after his second divorce created financial vulnerabilities that made him susceptible to recruitment." Mercer's face had gone from flushed to pale. His eyes darted to the exits, calculating escape routes. "Don't," Maya said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "There are Marines at every exit. There are electronic countermeasures in place. There is nowhere to run, Vincent." For a long moment, Mercer stood frozen. Then, slowly, his shoulders sagged. The defiance leaked out of him like air from a punctured tire. "My daughter," he said, his voice hollow. "They said they'd pay for my daughter's medical treatment. It was supposed to be temporary. Just a few pieces of low-level information." "It's never temporary," Maya replied, not without sympathy. "And it's never just a few pieces. They owned you the moment you accepted that first payment." Admiral Castellanos nodded to the security personnel stationed at the doors. "Captain Mercer, you're under arrest." "Take him." As Marines moved to secure Mercer, Commander Cross stood abruptly. "Admiral, I need to check on the encryption protocols for the repositioning." "Sit down, Commander," Maya said. Cross froze. "You're not going anywhere near those protocols," she continued. "Because while Captain Mercer was the primary asset, you were his most useful idiot, discussing classified operations in unsecured spaces, violating document security, creating vulnerabilities that Mercer exploited at every opportunity." Cross's face went through several shades of red. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't care," Maya said flatly. "You treated support staff like furniture. You had classified conversations in front of people you assumed were too stupid or too foreign to understand. You violated every basic security protocol because you were more concerned with looking important than being competent." She turned to Admiral Castellanos. "Commander Cross is not a foreign asset. He's just dangerously careless. I recommend immediate removal from any position involving classified materials and mandatory security retraining." The Admiral nodded. "Agreed. Commander Cross, you're relieved of duty pending formal review." As both Mercer and Cross were escorted from the room, one in handcuffs, the other in humiliated silence, the remaining officers sat in stunned silence. Maya stood at the front of the room, still wearing her gray custodial uniform, now wholly incongruous with the authority she'd just demonstrated. "The destroyer repositioning will proceed on schedule," she announced. "All security protocols have been verified through alternate channels. The device Captain Mercer planted beneath this table has been neutralized by the same bomb disposal team he used to supervise." A few nervous laughs echoed through the room, tension releasing in the only way it could. "One more thing," Maya added, her voice softening slightly. "For 14 months, I watched how this facility operates. I saw which officers treated support staff with respect, and which ones treated them like props. I saw who maintained proper security discipline, and who thought rules were suggestions for lesser ranks." She let that sink in. "Some of you have nothing to worry about. Some of you should be deeply concerned about what's in the reports on filing. I'd suggest you spend the weekend reflecting on which category you fall into." With that, she gathered her materials, placed them back in her cleaning cart, and walked out of the conference room. Behind her, she left a base full of officers who would never again assume the quiet person cleaning around them couldn't understand every word they said. Epilogue. 3 months later, Captain Maya Reeves stood in her proper uniform, no longer gray, no longer anonymous, addressing a room full of intelligence trainees at the Naval Intelligence School. "The most valuable intelligence asset," she told them, "is not technology. It's not surveillance equipment or satellite imagery. It's understanding human nature, specifically understanding who people choose not to see." She clicked to a slide showing her custodial uniform. "For 14 months, I was invisible. Officers discussed classified operations 3 feet from my head. They left secure terminals unlocked. They treated me like furniture that occasionally moved." She advanced to the next slide. The photograph of Captain Mercer being led away in handcuffs. "The enemy knows this about us. They know we have blind spots. They know we categorize people as relevant or irrelevant based on uniforms, accents, job titles. And they exploit those blind spots ruthlessly." A hand went up in the back row. "How did you maintain cover for so long without breaking?" Maya considered the question. "By remembering that invisibility is a choice, not a limitation. Yes, it was humiliating to be dismissed and overlooked. But every time someone ignored me while discussing classified information, they were making my job easier." Another trainee raised her hand. "Do you think the operation was worth it? 14 months is a long time." 3 field operatives died because of the intelligence Captain Mercer compromised," Maya replied, her voice harder. "If 14 months of cleaning floors prevents 3 more deaths, then yes, it was worth it." She clicked to her final slide, a quote in simple text. The most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody bothers to see. Your mission as intelligence professionals is twofold, Maya concluded. First, learn to see what others overlook. And second, learn to be what others underestimate. Because somewhere out there, a hostile intelligence service is training their people to be invisible to you. Make sure you're looking in the right places. The class ended. Trainees filed out, already discussing the case study, already imagining themselves in similar situations. Maya gathered her materials and stepped outside, where Admiral Castellanos was waiting. Hell of a lecture, Captain. Thank you, Admiral. They walked together across the training facility grounds, the California sun warm on their faces. I have another assignment for you, Castellanos said, if you're interested. Maya raised an eyebrow. Another 14 months as a janitor? Actually, I was thinking dental hygienist. We have a facility in Japan with concerning security patterns. Nobody ever pays attention to the person cleaning their teeth. Maya laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound she hadn't made in over a year. Why not? She said. I've always wanted to see Tokyo. They walked on, two professionals who understood that sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't firepower or technology. Sometimes it was simply knowing when to be invisible and when to become devastatingly, undeniably visible. The ghost in the hallway had served her purpose. Now she was ready to haunt new corridors, unseen and underestimated, watching and waiting for the moment to emerge from the shadows. Because the invisible woman was never truly alone. She was everywhere, watching, listening, remembering every word spoken by people who forgot she existed. And that made her the most dangerous person in any room.